Members, Dr. Bozzini.
Here.
Hold on one second. Rodney, can you come mute? We're getting an echo. Thank you.
Echo. Dr. Cole.
Here.
Mike, we can't hear you. I don't know why. Can you speak up?
How about this here?
We can't hear you, Mike, still.
I think it's.
1 second, Mike, please. Qiagen.
Is this microphone working?
It works. Thank you, Dr. Cole.
Hello?
We got you, Dr. Coble. Can you hear
Okay.
us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thanks.
Okay.
Mr. Daniel. Here. Dr. Downing.
Here.
Dr. Drake.
Here.
Dr. Kerrigan.
Here.
Mr. Parsons.
Here.
Ms. Zemek.
Here.
All right, everyone is here. Item number 2 is the review and adopt of minutes from the January 31, 2025 meeting. Is there any discussion? Move to approve. Motion has been made to approve the minutes as drafted. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3 is the office administrative update.
Thank you, Dr. Barnard. We have in your materials the budget, which just tracks in an ongoing way expenditures. We're on track with what we expected to spend. Excuse me, I think Lee may have an update, a brief update on how we're progressing with transitioning our license applications from top class to AFIN software, which is Alice. Did you want to give that update, Lee?
Sure. We are working on transitioning our application process for the licensing program from top class to the program we've referred to the acronym as ALIS. It's ALIS. And we've had meetings with their programmers there. And we also have a program manager at the Office of Court Administration that's helping us kind of usher along the project. And she's doing a really good job. And I think our target date now is August 31 this year. To hopefully be live and completely done with launching that.
They're doing it in a series of updates. In May, there'll be one. In August, hopefully people will be able to start applying on that system. And it's much more user-friendly than what they're currently using. So we think it'll be a welcome change in the community.
All right. Item number 4 is the discussion and consideration of complaints and laboratory self-disclosures. Mr. Manning.
Dr. Norton, member of the commission, you have 8 disclosures. I think most, I think, reopening of a matter we addressed back in January.
Mr. Daniel, I don't know if your mic is on, you're loud there.
How's that?
I swear I did not turn this off.
I saw you.
Thank you.
Oh, good. What I was saying is we have 8 self-disclosures and 5 complaints. Nothing that is overly complicated. We have one matter we may, depending on the action taken, even reopen. But we'll start off with item 24.59 out of the Austin Forensic Science Department. Their forensic and biology DNA section. They had received a package of evidence back in November that had showed some signs of mold growth. It was a sexual assault kit. They became aware that it somehow been packaged in the paper, which is somewhat porous, but then also added a plastic outer covering. They believe that is the cause of the mold growth. They photographed all of the evidence. They forwarded the Texas DPS capital area lab for inventory and assessment. They had 3 other items of evidence that had the same condition. They notified all of their stakeholders, including the Austin PD, and based on the status review of it, they're going to take a more careful look at screening probative evidence of the case for biological evidence. Staff had brought forth a recommendation of taking no further action in the matter, which I concur with, and I'm prepared to make that in the form of a motion.
Okay, motion has been made for no further action. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
And that will bring us to our second disclosure. It's item 25.606 from the Bexar County Criminal Investigation Laboratory. They had an analyst that had claimed some overtime back in early January when they actually did not perform any work during those specific days, which was December 30 through January 3 of 2025. They had turned it over to internal investigation. The analyst had submitted inaccurate time. The investigation revealed they believed that she was genuinely affected by certain personal issues, which we had no need to discuss. The investigation also revealed that she was not deliberately trying to deceive the records or the documentation. I believe the lab thought it appropriate to give her an additional opportunity. They did issue a written reprimand and required additional training. And that sort of concluded the matter. And while that is somewhat personnel in nature, it's still something that has to be reported to this commission, which we expect the laboratory to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. I did want to say there's been an update to that situation, which is very, very recent. And the district attorney's office obviously uses witnesses, sponsors witnesses, what I should say, not uses. They sponsor witnesses and they have weighed in on it. And that has led to the person being put on administrative leave. So we think that there will likely be further action, but it's very much ongoing. So we will trust that the lab will keep us informed of the ultimate resolution. But it has moved beyond just allowing for retraining. She's on leave. And the DA's office has an opinion about whether she would be able to testify in criminal cases and that is the part and parcel of the job of a forensic analyst is testifying. So I don't think we need to do anything further on this. I just wanted to let you know that the posture of this analyst has changed within the lab. The laboratory representatives are here. I don't know that we need any further input, but I just wanted to make sure that folks know that it is moving forward literally as we speak, as we sit here.
It would be well served to maybe table it as opposed to taking no action, which is taking action, and wait until our July meeting and see what evolves out of that.
We could do that.
Well, in light of that discussion, I would respectfully make a motion that we table that item.
All right, motion has been made to table action on this self-disclosure. Is there a second?
Second.
Second's been made. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries to table.
Which brings us to our third item. It's item 25.10 from the Quality Forensics Toxicology Lab, their toxicology section, blood alcohol. They had discovered back in early March that their BAC1 and BAC2 columns were actually installed incorrectly by an Agilent field service technician. The case report at that time frame were reported incorrectly. The BAC2 column laboratory set about to recalculate all the data from the affected reports, which was not numerous. It was 2 clients with total 4 cases. They appropriately amended the reports. They've issued that identified the issue as being directly attributable to the analysts. And basically, reached a non-consistent result called American Pathologist Proficiency Test. The lab also contacted Ashland to remedy the problem. They notified the stakeholders, being the Berry County Sheriff's Office and the Wiley PD. It looks like it's been adequately addressed. Staff had carefully reviewed the matter, brought forward the recommendation to us of taking no further action. And if there not any further questions, I'll go ahead and make that in the form of a motion.
We did end up asking more questions of the lab based on feedback from Dr. Qiagen, so I let her talk about why she had questions and what the lab responded.
Sure, so we did ask for some additional information from quality forensic toxicology on this matter, the issue of having the technician simply come back to replumb the columns in the correct positions, not really a root cause analysis or a corrective action. And so the concern here was that this issue was not identified until the lab essentially had a non-consensus proficiency test result. And so it raised questions concerning the verification or running of controls after routine maintenance or preventive maintenance on the GC, which is routinely done in labs. So that was the issue. It was what type of verification or controls are run after routine maintenance. And the lab did respond, and they explained that their current protocol only requires them to essentially re-verify the quantitative result for the ethanol, which was essentially unchanged. But what they were not doing was monitoring the relative retention times, because had they run a control after the routine maintenance, they would have seen that the columns had been switched, because the relative retention times and the retention time order potentially would have been altered. So I think we are asking for the lab to actually complete, now that the lab seemed to identify that this is an issue, that they have to have an amended procedure for controls and reviewing data after maintenance. We're going to table it and ask for the lab to complete a proper root cause analysis.
Well, Dr. Karen, I would welcome you to make that in the form of a motion that we table.
You want to rescind your motion?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, so we'll make that in the form of a motion to table 2510 from quality forensic toxicology.
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion is carried.
And that will bring us to our fourth item. It's item 2511, now the Houston Forensic Science Center, their forensic biology DNA section. In early March, they discovered that the lab had accidentally uploaded 2 blind quality controlled DNA samples into the CODIS system. Actually resulted in a couple of hits out of Tennessee. It was inadvertent. The lab had bought 5 blood samples from a commercial vendor, part of its blind quality control system, and the analysts entered the samples into the CODIS and not into the lab's elimination database. Blind control samples are processed this way so as not to be discovered as blind samples. It's part of their program. The intention of maintaining the profiles and that system is to allow for the blind to proceed undiscovered within the report writing phase. The DNA analyst who processed the cases at issue did not really have permission to enter the profiles into CODIS because the lab had just recently authorized her to be an analyst. Laboratory has since deleted the profiles from CODIS, and the 2 cases were not removed from electronic folder. However, the 2 cases were not removed from electronic folder labeled as ready for CODIS, and therefore were not recognized as being previously identified blinds. the lab determined the cause to be a lack of clear labeling system for the blind samples on electronic case records. They removed the 2 samples. They have set about to do some more intensive training. They've since bought replacement samples. The staff had brought forth the recommendation of taking no further action, which I'm prepared to make unless there are any comments or questions. If not, I'll make that form of motion to take no further action.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
And that will bring us to our 5th item. It's item 25.12. It's also from Houston Forensic Science Center of Crime Scene Investigation. It is not very complicated. In March, the lab determined they had a crime scene trainee who was conducting unauthorized, unsupervised casework involving prints, photographs, a gun magazine. The work obviously did not meet the standard outlined in the lab procedures. The lab had authorized the trainee to conduct casework only under the supervision of a crime scene unit training program. The trainee did not notify the crime scene unit supervisors or other supervisor of the Forensic Services Division of the work he was performing. Due to the communication problems, the trainee had entered into a learning plan of some kind facilitated by the Human Resources Department, and he had successfully completed it while doing continuing supervised casework back in December 24. The analyst was ultimately terminated by their Human Resources Department. He had participated in 44 other cases. The lab reviewed those matters and found no other issues with their work. The DA's office and the Harris County Public Defender's office have also been appropriately notified. And so it was somebody sort of getting outside their lane, but staff had reviewed it carefully and brought forth a recommendation that we take no further action, which I'm prepared to make in the form of motion if there are not any comments or questions. And with that being the case, I will make a motion. We take no further action.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
And that will bring us to our 6th matter. It's 25.13 from the Corpus Christi PD Crime Lab, their latent prints section. The lab had reported an incident in its print friction reading section where the latent print examiner identified one print on a suspect and then misidentified the other. This was discovered by Ron Smith and Associates. They were providing some consulting or some additional work due to inadequate staffing. The latent print examiner readily acknowledged that they had reached original conclusion in error. Lab set about determining what the source of the issues were. They believed it was from the number one, the latent print examiner properly applied a simultaneity application properly and actually lacked the proper training to do so. The latent print manual lacked guidelines of when and how to use the simultaneous impressions. And then they discovered the examiner had been working late in the day and was trying to complete some tasks probably too soon. They notified all the stakeholders, including the prosecutor's office. They've interviewed the examiner as far as corrective action and removed her from casework during the review. They reviewed all the casework from back in 2024 and did not find any additional errors, and they had some external training that the examiner had to participate in. And if there are not any comments or questions or concerns, I'm prepared to make a motion that we take no further action in connection with this matter.
I'd just like to add in this one that the cause mapping is just extensive and it's a really exemplary example of a root cause analysis from the Corpus Christi Police Department Crime Lab. It's really impressive.
It is, and I think it just goes to show, Corpus Christi PD is a small organization. And they attended the root cause workshop that we did a number of years ago that Mark LeBeau from the FBI led. And they have given us exemplary RCAs ever since then. They put into place all the tools that Mark suggested, it seems like, or, some of them, and you can tell by the quality of what they give us. And I just think I would like to recognize that when we issue their no further action letter, because they really did do a good job. And it just goes to show you can be small and mighty when it comes to quality.
So I will respectfully make a motion to take no further action.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And that brings us to our seventh matter from the Dallas Police Department Crime Lab, their crime scene investigation unit. It's a sad situation. Back in November 2024, they discovered a crime scene personnel had passed away unexpectedly, and they were reviewing or cleaning out the office and desk and had found case notes with no reports or sketches that were never completed. It went all the way back to 2016 to 2020. It affected about 51 different cases. They actually found a total of 58 missing crime scene sketches, primarily homicide matters. They immediately reported this to Dallas County District Attorney's Office. They conducted an audit of all the laboratory employee office areas. They completed the audit, fortunately, with the good news of no additional findings. They determined the primary cause was a lack of a process for tracking cases by supervisors or having an electronic case tracking system in place, which they did not have. And they also did not have a specific time frame for case completion, which they've now incorporated in a 10-day window. They're ensuring that all crime scene calls are documented with completion dates for the tasks of reports, notes, sketches, quality review, and are implementing a new tracking process. They've somewhat attributed this to personnel issues, staffing issues, I guess I could say. And they have a budget request for new civilian employees, including crime scene analysis, crime scene technicians, and a supervisor. So it's a lot of personnel saturated issues that it appears they're going to address adequately. And staff had brought forth a recommendation that there's no need to take further action on what they're doing, which I concur with. And if there aren't any questions or concerns, I'm prepared to make that in the form of a motion. If no questions or concerns, I will make a motion to take no further action.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second has been made. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And then we have our typical missing evidence matters that we now have a category on. Item 25.05, it comes from DPS Midland, their seized drug section. They've been informed the lab of a missing case. It was a $1 bill with 0.16 grams of meth. It originated from the Midland lab. It originally had 3 cases were packaged by the laboratory into the evidence container. The evidence technician said he certainly removed all 3 from the envelope and placed in the FedEx box to be shipped back to the customer. The lab determined it is certainly short-staffed at this time in the evidence receiving section. They're using other people to perform evidence receiving duties and assisting in the receipt and return of evidence. It's another lost item is what it is. They determined that one case was not moved in the box and possibly disposed of in the original receiving envelope. And then they say another one of the items may have been dismissed place while moving it from the envelope to the box. They notified the agencies, including the Pecos County Attorney's Office. The matter was actually dismissed. They also conducted an audit of the vault and did not locate the missing case. And in the future, they will require verification items are placed into the shipping container, and they'll seal them immediately upon verification. So they're taking steps to ensure it does not happen again in the future, which is good. A little more they can do, I'm not sure of, but staff had reviewed it carefully and felt like a recommendation of bringing us a recommendation, no further action, which I concur with. And if there are not any questions or comments, I will make that formal motion. With no question or comments, I'll also move we take no further action.
Motion's been made for no further action. Is there a second?
Second.
Second's been made. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
And then that brings us to our complaints. Our first item is 24.46. It's Patrick Nils or Niles. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. He is complaining against forensic forgery experts and their documentation examination. Analyst was Patricia Hale. He claimed that she had issued a report falsely implicating him in a handwriting sample that he did not produce. He claimed there were methodological flaws, unsupported conclusions, and she failed to adhere to professional and ethical standards. The complaint alleges that the report fails to explain how the methodology was applied. There omitted details about the quality of the handwriting samples and whether some natural variations were even taken into account. It also claimed that the analysts failed to outline or validate their methods, and the alleges the report provided no details about peer review. The preliminary recommendation is that staff receive this matter and investigate it for limited purpose of making several observations concerning integrity and reliability of forensic handwriting examples, and best practices, and also any other observations that they come across, they present before the commission that might be appropriate in connection with handwriting samples.
So I think one of the thoughts here, Mr. Daniel, is that we haven't, document examination is actually one of the disciplines that we have not looked at. It used to be required for accreditation and it no longer is. So I think the least we could do is sort of do a survey of what's currently going on in the discipline. And in fact, if you were to look at the OSAC Registry of Standards, they have 19 different standards on the registry, not all of which will be specific to this because it covers all the question documents. But I do think it might benefit the community, much like we did years ago with the photogrammetry case. This precedes some of y'all serving on the commission. It was back when Richard Albert was here, because he chaired that committee, I believe. But we had done sort of a state of the discipline report in a case out of Bell County. And so the thought was that we should, it's probably in some senses overdue that we do a similar type report here. Because it is a discipline that's not subject to mandatory accreditation, the statute limits us to that type of report, but I do think it would be beneficial to the community. And I know that, for example, to the extent we do have accredited document examiners, that would be probably DPS only at this point. I don't know how much handwriting analysis DPS does, a lot, some. So they will have a perspective on how this should be done properly, so we can lean on them to some degree to help us understand the state of the science. But there are a lot of individual practitioners out there. We have no idea if they're following any of the standards that are published, but there's a very active subcommittee of OSAC. People like Jerry Laporte, who is involved in that subcommittee, and I'm sure he would make himself available to help this commission, write a report that will be beneficial for the community of end users, in particular, the lawyers, the courts and so forth. So that's the idea behind this staff recommendation. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer. I do think that this report can be done pursuant to the admin code section that allows for staff investigation. But if y'all disagree and wanna put a panel on it, that would be fine. Either way, but I think the staff can handle the drafting of the report and presenting it to the full commission. If you were to create a panel, we could do that too, either way.
Let's, just for discussion purposes, why don't we, let the staff commence with the staff investigation, and they could advise us if they believe a panel would be necessary to assist in their efforts. Okay, so with that being said, I respectfully make a motion that we accept the complaint for investigation. The purpose and scope of that investigation is to make all observations regarding the integrity and reliability of handwriting analysis and examination, and also review of best practices for that discipline, and then any other observations that the commission deems appropriate. And all that's being done pursuant to 38.01, Article 38.01A3B1 of the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure. I'll make that form of motion.
Our motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second's been made. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Which brings us to our next matter, which is complaint 24.58. It's Qiagen. I think I pronounced that correctly. It involves DPS Tyler in their seized drug section. And I want to begin by commenting that you may recall that the commission took a vote to dismiss this complaint back at our January meeting. And that falls in the category of oops. And the reason I say that is that that meeting we had misunderstood certain components of the complaint. We had an impression the complaint was focused on the conversion of cannabinoidol to tetrahydrocannabinol with THC during lab testing. And the truth is actually focused on the conversion of THC acid A to THC. And there's a real issue about whether substance is illegal at all. So if you've had a chance to review it, the issue should be reopened for investigation. We have authority to do that under Administrative Code 651.305H. And so I would, at this time, respectfully make a motion, Commission, reopen this complaint for investigation pursuant to the Texas Administrative Code.
Motion's been made to reopen the complaint. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Daniel, could you please take a motion to withdraw the former dismissal vote? Being as saying that would be the cleanest way to do it, so we just want to go ahead and do that. Thank you.
That's where you make a motion and say you messed up the first time.
Yeah.
You withdraw the vote.
And I want to also revisit our January 31, 2025 action and make a motion that we withdraw our action on this same complaint at that January 31, 2025 meeting of the Texas Forensic Science Commission.
Motion's been made to withdraw the previous vote from January. Is there a second?
Second.
Second's been made. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We don't have to revote the first one. We just do it.
No.
All right. Which would bring us to our next action item on this same item. Since we voted to reopen, then we need to make a motion to accept the complaint for investigation by staff under that same provision, 651.305B of the Texas Administrative Code. Allow them to go to work.
All right, motion's been made to accept the complaint by, for investigation by staff. Is there a second?
Second.
Second's been made. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries.
And then there were 3 staff dismissals of complaints over the last quarter, and I'll take those collectively as one item. The first one was 25.
No, you gotta.
You're gonna recuse on the third guy. The first item is 25.07. It's brought by Raymond Hill, complaining against Polaris Forensics. They misdiagnosed a claim of water intrusion, when in fact it was termed the area inspection was not really discovered by water intrusion at all. This really doesn't involve some forensic analysis of physical evidence for the purpose of determining its connection to some criminal case. So I will respectfully make a motion to dismiss, to validate and adopt staff's action dismissing that complaint for lack of jurisdiction. Motion.
That's fine. Motion's been made to dismiss. Is there a second?
Second.
Second's been made. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
That brings us to item 25.08. It's by Mr. Alvaro Vega. She had not received the complaint not received response from the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences regarding an autopsy of her husband over a 7-month period of delay. Again, we don't have jurisdiction over autopsies and pathology conducted by a medical examiner, and staff had administratively dismissed that. I would make a motion that we adopt or bless staff's action.
Motion been made to dismiss. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And item 2515, again, is a staff dismissal. I think Dr. Bernard is going to recuse himself. That was accurate. And
Dr. Drake will lead this. Yeah.
Dr. Drake, if you're ready, item 2515 is a complaint by Ronald Taylor, also alleging negligence by the Southwest Institute of Forensic Science concerning the analysis and investigation of evidence in a hit and run death of her son. And her complaint essentially focused on the lab failed to reveal any specific crimes and information about collection of physical evidence of clothing and tire treads. It also included listed evidence received by the tox section, which included only bodily fluids in a biohazard bag. And again, the commission has no jurisdiction over autopsy work, and there's no showing that the law enforcement submitted any evidence such as the clothing and tire treads for any form of forensic analysis. So it's a little bit out of our lane, and I will make a motion that we adopt and bless staff's action dismissing complaint number 25.15. That's the motion.
We have a motion to dismiss action 25.15. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
And I believe that concludes at this time our self-disclosures and compliance. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Bernard.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. Item number 5 is an update from staff and review of possible adoption of final investigative report for self-disclosure 24.58.
So when we were looking at Mr. Qiagen's complaint regarding the THC to THC conversion, it became obvious to us. I'm getting an echo. I don't know why. Hold. Is it me? No, I'm there. How about now? Echo? No. Okay, great. So if you all recall, there was Dr. Drake's green, her box is green, but her thing is showing muted, I wonder. 'Cause it seems like the. How about now, testing? Okay, that seems better, sort of. Okay, so once we realized that we had a complaint from Mr. Schuett that did not involve CBD to THC conversion, but rather involved THCA, which is the acid form, to THC, which is the neutral form. So for those of you who don't know about this entire world of, hemp and marijuana analysis, THCA is non-hallucinogenic, whereas once it gets heated and converts to THC, that is the state where you get high from the substance. The neutral THC, the isomers that you hear associated with THC often are delta 9, which is the one that's actually written into the law. There's also delta 8 and others. So what we realized pretty quickly was Mr. Schuett was complaining that he would not have been evicted if the lab had done a method that would have distinguished between THCA and THC. Now, whether that is true or not is beyond the scope of this commission's jurisdiction, but what we did think we needed to do was take a look and really talk to the labs to see what methods they're running in this space. And what we see is that some labs do full quantitation, some use LC, some are using a GC method with derivatization, which allows you to separate and distinguish THCA from THC, and then others are running a GCMS method that does not allow that distinction, DPS being among those labs. So what we did first is we took a survey of the community, and you can see there's a spreadsheet in your files that reflects that. And then what we realized is what we really have here is a clarity and reporting issue. And so we work with DPS to talk through that and to make sure that irrespective, because right now there's a lot going on in the legislature around making all intoxicating THC products illegal. So there's just a lot of work being done legislatively in this space, and part of it is to clarify, I think, what was done when the hemp bill was passed. What we see is that our job, the commission's job, is to make sure to help the labs report to the end user in the way that has clarity, in a way that they can see the limits of the method. I mean, this is an accreditation requirement, it's a requirement in the Code of Professional Responsibility. So when we talked with DPS, they agreed that the better way to report these results would be to indicate clearly that the vape, in this case it was a vape, so they validated a method for liquids and oils, that it contains THC and or THCA, because if you're running a method that can't distinguish, you should be clear that it could be all THCA, it could be THC, or it could be a combination of both. So the report that is before you for approval essentially speaks to that issue. It does a couple of things. It talks about changing the reporting language for any lab that runs a method that cannot distinguish. They should be clear that it's and or. And to add some language that talks about the fact that the method itself, through the heating process, does convert THC in its acid form to THC neutral. So those are the two main items coming out of this report, and we felt like there was some urgency to getting it handled by the commission so that the labs have real direction about how to proceed, because right now DPS is not testing. They've suspended their testing, and that is going to contribute to a pretty significant backup of cases in the system, which is not helpful to anyone. So we were hoping that we could pretty quickly get this report in front of you, which we had done. If you'll notice in here, it includes a referral to the Office of Capital and Forensic Writs of this case or any other cases that we get that include complaints of this nature, because we may receive more. I think the focus is on clarity and reporting, and then the legal system needs to take it from there. So that's what the hope is with this report, and that's the recommendation, is that the commission proceed so that we can get it resolved. I don't know if anyone out there who's worked on this, which includes a lot of you that are sitting in the audience, have anything DPS, if you have any comments, or I think it's pretty straightforward. Dr. Qiagen and Dr. Drake both looked at this and helped us with the resolution. If you had anything else you wanted to add.
I wanted to just clarify that everything you said really only pertains to non-plant matrix, which is very important because we have very good clarification that the total THC, which is produced during the instrumental method, is completely acceptable for plant matrices. So it's really a very separate issue for any specimens or matrices that do not comprise of plant material. So it's somewhat limited in its scope.
Yeah, sorry, I should have said that. This is non-plant material, non-plant products, liquids, oils, waxes, those sorts of things. The plant material, there was an extensive exercise with interlab validation efforts done. As you may all recall, there are a couple of articles in your material about the efforts in Texas on plants. So this is specific to non-plant products.
And I'm assuming that, oh, go ahead. Sorry, Nancy, go ahead.
Oh, I just had a weird question. So I know that vape pens themselves heat the material that's in them, right? So that itself could convert the TCHA potentially to THC. What if a person is,
Yes.
so I was
Yes.
wondering, if a person has partially used a cartridge in it just seems like there's a lot of nuance there. Like if they partially use what's in there, and when they purchased it, it was THCA, but now when it's being tested, it might come back over the limit. I don't know, just a question.
But THCA doesn't have any sort of products that get you high, correct?
Correct. It's not pharmacologically active. And see, the issue is that the device itself, for example, the vape pen operates at a very high temperature, so it converts the THCA into THC, which is what comes out of the instrument. But what's in the cartridge is THCA. But the clarity in reporting is important because it's the liquid, for example, in a vape cartridge that is being analyzed, and it's being reported as the liquid, for example, that is inside the vape cartridge. And at that point, it is in fact, or could have THCA in it. The procedure itself converts it into THC, which is legally acceptable because for plant material, we're instructed to look at total THC, but it's somewhat ambiguous for non-plant material, and that ambiguity requires some special handling in the reporting if a technique that can't differentiate the two is being used.
And I'm assuming that the legislation that's in front of the legislation right now from the lieutenant governor, pushed by the lieutenant governor, is to essentially make all THC products or illegal. Am I correct on that, Lynn?
Yes, sir.
Which would then make THCA illegal as well and close the loophole?
Right, so at that point, you could use a method that doesn't distinguish because there's no longer this question. I should say, Mr. Parsons, that there are a number of bills up on this question that both Brady and Peter have been busy testifying on. There are some bills that would have a carve out for actual products containing CBD that are sold in liquor stores. So it's a definitely legislatively, there's a lot in motion, and Dr. Stout looks like he wants to get up. You're welcome to say whatever you want to say on that.
Peter Stout, Texas Association of Crime Lab Directors and guy that goes to the ledge a lot. SB 3 would eliminate all of the various THCs. Any other cannabinoid other than CBD, cannabidiol, or CBG, cannabigerol, would be strictly illegal. All the other bills, it's some mixed thing. And I guess what I would say for anybody that's listening, this is a kind of key thing, is it needs to be unambiguous about how something, the acid forms of these THCs are handled. Otherwise, we're still going to be in the same pickle.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, is there a motion to adopt the proposed draft report by staff providing guidance on the THC, THCA reporting issues raised by the complainant?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Did you want to talk about it, this other one, or we can just go straight to a motion?
I'm going to go straight to the motion.
All right, is there a motion to refer the complainant's case and similarly affected cases to the Office of Capital Forensic Writs pursuant to Code of Criminal Procedure Article 3801, Section 3H, as well as Texas Government Code Section 78.0545B? Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second's been made. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to item number 6, discussion of the status of the Crime Laboratory Accreditation Program.
All right, this quarter, the commission has more than 16 accreditation-related events. 2 of those are audits or assessments that were pending from our last meeting. As you can see, we're still working on reviewing those with the corresponding accrediting bodies. There were 9 surveillance assessments and continuations of accreditation, 3 surveillance assessments for scope extensions, and a continuation of accreditation for each of those. And 1 laboratory went through full reassessment and renewal. If you have any questions about the summaries in here, please let us.
There are a couple of items that we're carrying forward that we're working on continuously, getting resolved, and they will stay in the memo until we resolve them satisfactorily.
I believe the QFT issue was carried over from the last meeting also.
They had an assessment activity that got extended. It was going to be resolved by now, but it was extended. So we have to wait and see the outcome of that.
Yeah.
Okay. For B here on the agenda, there were 19 reported proficiency monitoring, non-consensus communications from laboratories. We have 3 that we've indicated on here that we're still working through some issues on and correspondence on, so we will bring resolution to those at our next commission meeting. If anyone has any questions about the summaries there, please let me know.
Any questions? All right, item C.
For item C, this rulemaking distinguishes rapid DNA analysis as its own forensic discipline, following what the accrediting bodies NAB and A2LA have done in categorizing the type of analysis. We've just expressly done this in our rules rather than having it be assumed under forensic biology DNA. So we're asking that you all propose this rule today.
All right. Discussion. All right, is there a motion to propose changes to the rules discussed subject to suggested non-substantive revisions from the Office of the Governor, Texas Register, and Commission staff? Motion is made. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7, discussion updates from the Licensing Advisory Committee.
So currently, just to give you all an update on our licensees and their status, we have 1,339 total licensees, and we have several pending renewal applications that Rodney is working on, and we have about 5 to 6 new applicants each month that he works diligently on for us. As far as a report from the Licensing Advisory Committee meeting yesterday, we discussed, one of the primary things we did was discuss a draft guidance document and checklist for interagency and intra-agency proficiency monitoring for crime scene analysts. And TDIAI is an organization that is going to put on a really interesting, it sounds very cool, a mock proficiency monitoring program for crime scene analysts to come to the conference and participate in that. They're going to do a mock of it in June at this next annual conference, and then they plan to launch, based on what they learned from that, a full program that will count for proficiency monitoring credit at the following conference. Did you want to add?
I just want to thank everybody involved in that. Michelle Paulson, Shelley Rossi, everyone who's coming together to offer this. They're going to do a mock mock proficiency monitoring exercise, and then the hope is that it'll be offered at other, like at TAPIT and perhaps at TDIAI. We're working toward the idea that people will be able to take this regularly, so it's accessible and cost effective for folks. So we're grateful for all their work on that.
Yes, thank you, Shelley and Michelle. Yesterday, the committee also discussed the development of a directive to staff to form working groups that are going to help develop the next iteration of the General Forensic Analyst licensing exam. And so we're going to work on that and assign committees based on the 7 different domains to evaluate the current study materials we have and suggest revisions for the materials, and then from there develop questions for the exam. And I think the final action by the committee is actually 7E here that we'll discuss in the rulemaking. I don't have anything else. Did anyone else have anything to add from the committee meeting yesterday as far as action items? So for 7D, this rulemaking is our TCOL rule adoption that we refer to it as. It qualifies versions of the required TCOL course for crime scene licensees. These are our voluntary licensees that occurred before 2019, as long as it's taught by a TCOL certified instructor or other commission qualified subject matter expert. And this was a rulemaking we reviewed in our last meeting, and now we're adopting it.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt changes to the rules discussed, subject to suggested non-substantive revisions from the Office of the Governor, Texas Register and Commission staff?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, the next item here is our final rulemaking for today's meeting, and this proposal aligns the commission's coursework requirements for forensic biology DNA analysts with the FBI's updated quality assurance standards for forensic DNA testing. And this replaces the current requirement, which requires compliance with the 2011 version.
Is there any discussion? Is there a motion to propose changes to the rules discussed, subject to suggested non-substantive revisions from the Office of the Governor, Texas Register and Commission staff?
So moved.
Motion is made. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
For agenda item 7F here, we had one reported licensing issue this quarter where an analyst was terminated, and we've updated our records accordingly.
All right, discussion. All right. Next is agenda item number 8.
We are moving along with the investigation on DNA reference laboratory. Thank you to Commissioner Zemek for participating in those interviews. So far, we have interviewed the head of the lab, Dr. Sally. We've interviewed Ms. Castro, who was the subject of a disclosure. And I think the posture that we're in right now is that we really wanted A2LA, their accredited body, to look at those interviews. Because there's questions about proficiency testing and the way they were approaching proficiency testing that I think the accredited body really needs to weigh in on. They were responsive, they're aware of it. They've just had back-to-back ASCOT meetings followed by their own conference. And they told us they would be turning to those very soon. So we will work with A2LA. Our goal is to have a report draft for you by the July meeting. I don't know, Ms. Zemek, you want to say anything?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay, anything else? All right, let's move on to item number 9. It's an update from the investigative panel on complaint number 24.45.
So we have reached out to schedule one of the interviews, and once we get past this meeting, we'll be turning our attention fully toward 2445, so this investigation, which has a panel on it, so we'll have to be doing some in-person meetings for that. And then also finishing up the DNA reference lab. So we will have an update for you, hopefully a draft report for our July meeting.
Any discussion or any questions? All right, let's move on to item number 10, update from staff and review of possible adoption of final investigative report of self-disclosure 25.01.
Robert has a brief PowerPoint on this.
Is it working?
Yes.
Okay.
You just have to get really close to the port of Robert.
So we have displayed here, our efficiency monitoring certification form that's used by the commission. If you would just scroll down to the bottom, I want to kind of show them how it works. Yeah, it has to be right there. And so the column on your left would be where you put in an analyst's name, and then the column on the right that you just click on. You would then scroll down and select the discipline that you're reporting that they have been proficiency monitored in. And you'll notice each one of these analysts have 2 options because we have quite a few analysts that are dual licensed. They have a license in more than one discipline. So that's why it's designed that way, and that's kind of how it works. Okay, thank you. If you put the PowerPoint on. This is disclosure 2501. It comes to us from the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences. I'm just going to have to tell you to click it forward. All right. Okay. This disclosure is received okay. Alleging that a toxicology analyst who was previously a seized drug analyst altered their proficiency certification form that they submitted to the commission. It had been signed by the senior director of quality, and it was submitted along with her application. And so after investigation, the laboratory concluded that the analyst had knowingly altered the form to give a false impression that she'd been proficiency tested in the discipline of seized drugs, which she had not. So just generally, our programming rules that are in the administrative code requires an analyst to renew their license every 2 years. And part of that application process is to update a copy of the proficiency monitoring certificate that you just saw. The form has to be signed by the laboratory's authorized representative, like the quality director, and designates the specific discipline in which the analyst performs casework and has been proficiency tested. And then after that form is signed by the quality manager, it's given to the applicant, and the applicant uploads it along with their application to the TopCat system in order to renew your license. So this particular PT form was signed by the quality director of HCIF on October the 17th of 2024, and it lists numerous analysts that work in the laboratory, numerous disciplines. So it's designed to cover the whole lab, basically. And then after it was signed by the quality director, it's distributed to multiple analysts in the laboratory, and then they would upload it to their application. When it was distributed, this PDF that we were just looking at, the form was not locked down, and it was still editable if someone wanted to edit it. Top of the form says licensed analysts must participate in the proficiency monitoring program that corresponds to their specific discipline and job duties. And the form signed by the quality director on October 17th listed this particular analyst's discipline as toxicology analyst only. General non-interpretive, but that was the only discipline that she was certified by the quality director. So soon after that, the analyst uploaded their application and a form. And then on December the 6th of 2024, the analyst was meeting with their forensic toxicology director and raised a question about whether she should maintain her seized drug license. Because she'd been dual licensed since 2018. On and she was referred to the quality director, and then on December the 9th, the analyst emailed the quality director with that same question, wondering if she should keep her seized drug discipline because she hadn't been tested since 2019. And this came as a surprise to the quality director because she should have only been renewed by the commission under toxicology because that's the only thing that the quality director had certified she was proficiency monitored in. The analyst responded that she just checked the PT form that she submitted to the commission and discovered that it incorrectly listed both disciplines of toxicology and seized drugs. And that was contrary to the form that had been previously signed by the quality director. And during explanations with the quality director, she told them that she had inadvertently messed with the drop-down menu of her discipline and the discipline of an analyst immediately below her. And then she told them that she must have saved it incorrectly and appeared to have submitted the wrong form to the commission along with her application. She also said this was not my intention because I know I only have PT for tox. The analyst told management that she had some issues with the drop-down menu that was due to a glitch in her Adobe system that she used at work. So management used an audit trail and determined that, in fact, this analyst had changed her discipline to include seized drugs as well as toxicologists. They tried to look at whether she changed anything on that other analyst that was immediately listed below her, but they were unable to do it because once you switch it back to its original value, you can't really track it. So we had an interview with the analyst, and she gave us her explanations of how this event took place. And she said when she was scrolling through to find her name on the form, she inadvertently clicked on this analyst below her and somehow changed that analyst's discipline. And she was trying to change it back to the correct discipline. And basically due to a misalignment of the page display based on this Adobe issue, she must have highlighted the section above that, which would be her second discipline, and changed that to a siege drug discipline accidentally. And that she was just in a rush and she just saved the changes. She thought it was correct and didn't notice it was wrong. You look at the way those drop-down menu work, when you want to add siege drugs, you have to scroll almost to the bottom because they're all listed in alphabetical order. She described her issues with Adobe as lagging a lot and having glitches, doing weird things. And she stated that she had submitted a help desk ticket because her computer was running slow and had these problems. She also indicated that she had some kind of confusion over the PT requirements, and she wasn't sure whether she had to continue to be proficiency tested siege drugs. She was trying to maintain that license because she sometimes had to go back and testify. It's a little bit contrary to her earlier explanation with management, where she says that she knows she's only been PT for talks. So we go through several internal emails during the materials. They're discussing the report from 2019 and 2020 when this was discussed inside the laboratory. And it's pretty clear at that point in time, at least, she knew that if she wanted to keep this siege drug license, that she had continuing education requirements and PT requirements to keep it. There is a little bit of a thing that happened in 2022 that may have added to her confusion. And that year, she applied to the commission for toxicology only, and then immediately emailed us and talked to the staff about whether she could add siege drugs or whether she had applied for both and could she correct it. And we accommodated her request. Inadvertently didn't check to see if she had a PT certification for that field. So we made a mistake in 2022 by renewing her siege drug license. So to the extent that she was confused, that might have added to the confusion. We did kind of run down this help desk ticket issue. She submitted a help desk ticket saying her applications were running slow and that her software hadn't been updated for several months. And the IT person who serviced that request reported that ticket was closed September the 30th of 2024, which is 3 weeks prior to the date the quality director signed this form. He also noted at that time that Adobe Pro did not have any issues and all updates had been installed and no further updates were required. So based on our investigation, all these facts that are kind of summarized here, the draft final investigative report would find that the analyst intentionally and deliberately altered a PT form after it was signed by the quality director and submitted it with her renewal application. That's based on several factors. Number one, she applied for a dual license, so this would just happen to correspond with that. Number two, just the sheer number of steps required to alter this form makes an unintentional alteration highly unlikely. And the Adobe glitch explanation is contradicted by the IT records that we reviewed. She did write us a couple of days ago explaining that her issues continued even after IT made their visit. We have no record of any complaints after that time with this laboratory, and they use Adobe all the time in their case. The fact that the altered PT form corresponded exactly with the application supports finding that it was intentional, and the form on its face is clear about the requirement. The analyst at that time was also concerned about passing a ABFT certification exam. The way that it runs at that lab, you have 3 years from entering toxicology in order to pass this exam, or then you kind of find something else. And, you know, we talked to her about that, and she did say that she kind of thought about returning to seized drugs, so she actually had a problem taking that test. So that also, if you wanted to, can lend support to the finding that the alteration was intentional.
Can I say something about, you know, one of the things that she said was that she was confused about the proficiency testing or proficiency monitoring requirement, but there are a couple of things that fly in the face of that claim. One is the form itself. It is a proficiency monitoring certification form with a drop down that has the option for one or multiple disciplines. There would not be that form if there were no proficiency monitoring requirements. So on its face, why have the form if there's no requirement? Why have the form with multiple discipline categories if you don't need to be proficiency monitored in each discipline? Additionally, when she contacted this director of quality asking whether she really should be dual licensed, because at some point I think she realized that she probably shouldn't be dual licensed. And she wanted to just fix it, you know, get it resolved. The director of quality immediately said, well, how are you dual licensed? I didn't certify you in drugs. I just certified you for tox. And the answer was, well, the form I submitted was wrong, and that must be why they approved it. So she acknowledged at the outset immediately that the reason the commission would approve both disciplines is because they received, or in this case, the licensing staff received the form that indicated both disciplines. So her immediate reaction showed that she did understand the proficiency testing requirement. It's only after, when she was trying to explain why she would apply for 2 disciplines, knowing she wasn't proficiency monitored in both, that she said she was confused. So I think the contemporaneous communications at the time that she raised the issue to the quality director after Dr. Gray, her supervisor, recommended that that's who she needed to talk to, that's one thing. And secondly, just why would we have that form if you didn't need to be proficiency monitored? You wouldn't need that form. There would be, it makes no sense on its face. So ultimately, I mean, we don't take it lightly and I don't think HCIFS took it lightly either to conclude that this was a knowing alteration of the form. But it's difficult to conclude anything else given all the facts that we saw and the communications and the multiple emails where she acknowledged knowing about the proficiency monitoring requirement. I mean, proficiency monitoring is not something that we added, you know, it is a known, it has been an accreditation requirement for a long time. It is part and parcel of the work of forensic science service providers, so accredited ones in particular. So ultimately, that was why we concluded what we did.
So the disciplinary action recommended in the report would be to suspend your license for the remainder of her current licensing term, because we did renew her in both just recently before we knew that this form had a problem, and then to refuse or deny her application for another 2 years after that.
Any further discussion? Thank you. All right, hearing none. Is there a motion to move to adopt the draft investigative report subject to non-substantive revisions by staff?
So moved.
I think I need to recuse on this one. I'm not sure if Sarah needs to as well, since she was our student.
Yes, so I am recusing on this, Dr. Drake.
Okay, so we have two refusals on this. So is it?
Excuse me, I also want to say that I don't need to recuse myself because the individual was there before I got at SEM. I wanted that to be on record as well.
Thank you, Dr. Lucini.
All right, back to the original. Is there a motion to adopt the draft investigative report subject to non-substantive revisions by staff?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second's been made. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next is item number 11, report from the Commission's Firearm Tool Mark Working Group.
All right, we have two different working groups with the firearm. The first one I'll talk about is the Method Performance Working Group, which we convened after the Nathan Williams report and the recommendations in that report. And in February, all the participants of that working group brainstormed the various factors that might affect performance in firearm or tool mark comparison, such as the type of materials, the fragments versus mutilated versus pristine samples. There's a list about 70 factors long. And then in March and April, we had two different meetings where we're taking that data and creating a worksheet with various inputs that are case specific, like the type of material, the known in question, the quality of the known, the quality of the question, the functionality of the weapons, all kinds of different variables. And we're still working through that worksheet, but it's designed so that when you put in the materials that you're working with, that it pulls from existing error rate studies and gives you a very specific or more specific error rate based on things that have been published since the NOVA study and the Munson study. One of those involves fragments versus entire projectiles, and it has varying error rates depending on the quality of the sample you're looking at. So that's a tool that is being developed by NIST, and I think it's very exciting for what the users going to end up with. The other working group had to do with blind verification. We spent 3 meetings coming to a consensus recommendation for adoption by the commission today. Should be, if you can make that big screen, I don't know if you can.
You can't because it has to show all the commissioners.
Okay. That's fine. It's in your meeting materials. The highlights of it though are that all of our laboratories beginning in November will do a minimum of 5% of their comparison cases that they complete will be subject to blind verification. It could be more than that. That would be the minimum, or 1 case per quarter, whichever is greater. But some laboratories don't have a great deal of volume. Another thing to point out is the blind verification cases are going to be selected before the process starts, and they're going to include the full range of opinions, not just in identifications or eliminations, but inconclusives as well, are all going to be blind verified. We have some notes about things not to count when you're trying to determine your 5%, like the lead confirmations, which are kind of biased towards an identification. And then, there's some documentation for the accrediting body to assess against, and that would go into effect November the 1st, 2025.
I would just like to say before you vote on the blind verification policy that there's some people we really need to thank. Number one, the working group, they work really hard. We meet, for an hour and a half, and it's really technical. Second, Henry Swafford and Steve Lund from NIST, who've been incredibly generous with their time. They're creating in the context of the method performance and method conformance working group, Steve Lund has created a tool to help the labs with reporting that it's called FAST, I believe, and he's going to be presenting that at our next meeting, so they're excited about that. They're really making progress, and the firearms community is, I would submit, not the largest of all of the disciplines that we have in terms of number of examiners, but it certainly covers a lot of labs. So when we adopt a blind verification policy, it's everybody from Corpus to DPS to Harris County Sheriff to Montgomery County who has one examiner plus who comes on contract to do verification. And they came up with this all together. And so I think what you're going to see is a range ultimately of the percentage of cases that folks end up blind verifying. SWIFT does 100%. So that would be at the top end, and I think it'll go probably from there on down. But as people get accustomed to doing blind verification, I think we'll see that it becomes second nature in a lot of the labs. So we think they've really done a good job. The lawyers have participated as well. Mara Robbins from OCFW, Bill Worski from Collin County DA's office. And I feel like they're well on their way to some really good work. And that all came out of the Neiman Roberts report. This blind verification policy will be adopted by everyone and assessed against what's happening. So we've already approved 3 SOPs for now. To when after November 1st, they'll start assessing to make sure everybody has a blind policy and to make sure they're following their blind policy.
All right. Any further discussion?
It's more of just a question, because all of this because the working group was formulated as part of that investigative report, will there be documentation, a sort of an amendment or a supplement in some way to that report to demonstrate everything that was done?
We can do that. We can do a supplemental report. Can you make a note of that, Robert? And I think what we would do is wait until the work of the group is completed and then do a report on the efforts that came out of it. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
All right, any further comments? Hearing none. Is there a motion to move to adopt the proposed draft firearm tool mark blind verification policy subject to non-substantive revisions by staff and the accrediting bodies?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconds been made. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next is agenda item number 11. So the discussion of the upcoming April 17th task force on rapid DNA.
So we will be meeting next week, April 17th. It is quite a group. We have everyone from the accrediting bodies, DPS, TAPLID, TAPWAM. It's like very thoroughly represented with backup representation and everything, because there's a lot that they care about how this proceeds. Texas Rangers, the police chiefs, the Sheriff's Association, TCDLA, TDCAA. So I feel like it's going to be a really interesting conversation about how we should proceed. The agenda includes Brady Mills from DPS is going to give a presentation about the evolution of the use of rapid DNA technology in the state of Texas, and what the possibilities are essentially for moving forward. And then we're going to talk CODIS, so people understand how CODIS works and what the rules are, the interface between rapid DNA and CODIS. We're going to present on the accreditation and licensing rules very briefly, what the law says about those things when it comes to DNA. And then we will brainstorm law enforcement's needs and their input and what they would like to see, like how the technology would best help them. Because it's a big state, and part of the challenge, I think, with implementation is geographic one in a sense. And then we need the money for the instruments. If the instruments don't get funded, there won't be much of a rapid DNA program. So we'll have to see. I do think there's a request for that before the legislature.
Brady Mills, TPS. Yeah, we're excited to work to this stage at this point. This technology's been being utilized for some time, both outside local law enforcement, civilian law enforcement, and then in civilian law enforcement across the country. So for us as a state, because we have the Texas Forensic Science Commission, we've got a lot of different groups. This is a very responsible way for us to partner to have this discussion. I think there's really two venues. The one is in the booking station. So how do we augment the CODIS program with rapid DNA in the booking station? There is a bill from the legislature this session to request the EPS to do a pilot in that space. So that's one avenue. And then there's the crime scene avenue as well. So we have an exceptional item with legislature to fund rapid DNA for us, which would then go into what we're all going to talk about here on the 17th. And then there's probably other opportunities for funding for the instrumentation. So we're excited to have the meeting on the 17th. I think the right people are at the meeting, so we can kind of keep this on to stay.
The booking station legislation, the pilot, which county or counties, does that designate counties?
It designates that we're allowed to select 2 counties. We had some discussions with the Lieutenant Governor's office just this week about what that selection would be. We originally had proposed as Montgomery County and Williamson County. Our thought process is we have Speeds in our Houston lab, which is close to Montgomery. We have CODIS and Speeds here in Austin, which is close to Williamson County. We have good relationships with the elected officials. Both sheriffs are newly elected that have been with the Ranger Service or Ranger Division with DPS in the past. And we also have good relationships with DAs as well. They, I guess, both of those guys know each other very well. So we're kind of setting the stage for a successful pilot. We just need to get the directive from the legislature.
Thank you.
From that meeting, is there going to be any sort of outline as to what should be done and what should not be done?
I think we're gonna start that conversation. I don't know that we'll have that all wrapped up next week, but
The ultimate goal would be that it's lined out for a motion.
yes, yeah, there'll be recommendations coming from that group for sure.
Our previous information from Dr. Stout, I think that there'll be some guidelines that need to be brought forward so that the operation works more effectively.
I think, yes, I think bringing everyone together to make folks cognizant of how it's gone wrong in the past. There are a number of jurisdictions who are a little bit hesitant. I would say Plano, Collin County is among that group, but willing to proceed if we're able to do it, as Mr. Mills said, in a responsible way, which is what we're aiming to do.
All right. Okay, so next, we have item number 13, which is an update on manufacturing issue with Qiagen. Ms. Zeman and Dr. Stout.
Dr. Stout, thank you for bringing the prop. Lugging it up from Houston.
Good morning, y'all. Peter Stout, Houston Forensic Science Center, and also Texas Association of Crime Lab Director. Yes, as you just mentioned, I see very old desk problems. Sorry, got another one here. Got the slides there. So before we get going on this, a couple of things I do want to say. One, there has been a fairly immense amount of work that has already gone into this, both from Houston Forensic Science Center's forensic biology team. I got to give Courtney Ron with an awful lot of credit that they have already done a lot. And signature science, Leslie, and Samantha there have done just an outstanding job and an awful lot of work in this. I'll be talking about this both from an HMSC perspective and a TAC lab perspective, because this is a statewide issue, essentially a nationwide issue. I've brought along, just so everybody has, so the camera can see it there. We're going to talk some about lot numbers. We're going to talk some about various ways these get referred to, but this is the kit. It has 48 of the cartridges in it, and the kit has other consumable materials in it. So there is a kit lot number, there is a cartridge lot number. I also want to bring these along so that I got pictures of these various things, but just so everybody kind of has the physical picture of what's going on with these. Within the kit, there are these blister packs that have 6 of the cartridges in them. This kit is not going to go back in production, so feel free to look at it, look it over. We've got plenty of blister packs in here. But yeah, so everybody kind of understands, because this is not one of those things that most people, like you work in the biology laboratory, you're probably not going to see these things typically. So this is the cartridge that we're talking about. Now, normally how this is intended to work, it's actually pretty slick technology. It is a mechanism to deal with extracting and purifying DNA. Okay, remember, I'm the toxicologist, not the biology type. If you got real biology questions, ask Erica. But basically, in that second well there, that's a little darker, there are magnetic beads in there that DNA binds to in the presence of high salt and low pH. It's really the same kind of stuff that goes on in small molecule chemistry, but those mag beads then allow for the beads to be isolated from the rest of the solution, while the rest of the cellular stuff and everything else gets washed away, leaving more pure DNA at the other end. The purified stuff, you basically pop the DNA off of those beads using a low salt, high pH environment. So the pH within these reagents is very important in how this functions. All right. I'll also say Qiagen is not some small thing doing this. Qiagen is a very large organization. It's a multinational corporation that manufactures many different clinical tests, biological tests, a lot of different things. They have many different ISO accreditations. I put a link in the document, has the link to one of their many published DNA quality materials. I highlighted there specifically ISO 18385 is the ISO accreditation that is specific to their human ID materials. So this is manufactured under ISO accreditation. There's lots of automation in this. There's actually a couple of different YouTube videos out there that they have published showing some of the automation of this. They use ethylene oxide within this as a mechanism to reduce and mitigate extraneous DNA profiles getting introduced. They have a risk management process in their quality assurance program, and they also maintain an exclusion database of staff for those extraneous DNA profiles. So I say that to say that they are not strangers to quality assurance. We've had right now within this product, and like I said, this is a widely used product all across the U.S. The majority of laboratories, the majority of work in Texas uses this. Not everybody does, but this is a widely used product. We've got 3 separate manufacturing issues that are going on right now. I'm going to spend most of the time talking about the first one there, which is a low or no recovery of DNA that happens sporadically. Individual cartridges, that's something also. That cartridge is a once and done. It is a consumable product. So that kit is basically 48 individual tests. The cartridge is consumed on that item that is tested. So periodically, we've got cartridges that are basically gone for the pH, and we get low or no recovery of DNA unexpectedly out of that cartridge. The other thing that we've got is the MTL buffer. I'll go into what that is, but it is one of those buffers that is the pH of it is very specific, but it's in the wrong well in the cartridge. And then we also have a circumstance where those magnetic beads are appearing in the first well. They should only be in the second well. So just for visual reference there, you can see on the left in green, that is the MTL buffer showing up in the wrong well. And that's been reported around the country. And then on the right picture is the presence of the magnetic beads that are showing up in the first well. So keep in mind, one of the quality control procedures in the manufacture of these is a visual check of the cartridges. Just saying. All right, so what did we find out? We saw this initially because of unintuitive results. We outsourced a lot of work to signature science, and we saw an uptick in samples that were presumptively positive for blood. So these are something that we have screened, we think it is blood, but now we're getting back lower no DNA, which is weird. Blood contains typically a lot of DNA, but not everything that screens positive for blood is in fact blood. There are lots of different things that are a red-brown stain that may not be blood. So it's not impossible that this would happen, but it is not intuitive. So these were all samples were extracted at Signature Science on an EZ1, EZ2 platform. So we went back and looked at these across time, and from November 2022 to May of 2024, we had 247 blood samples that were sent to CSI. We're still auditing through some of this, so these are numbers kind of as we're at in our audits. But we have about a 2.8% rate of unintuitive negative samples. So you kind of think of that, that's kind of our baseline expected. It's not surprising to us. We see that a lot. But from June of 2024 to August of 2024, 258 blood samples, and we had 37 of those that now came back without something. That's a 14% rate. That stuck out. Made us curious, so yeah, I get it. We're weird. We send those blinds. All of our vendors love us because some bald, cranky guy passes the blinds on through to the vendors. So we have blind samples we had passed on through to Signature Science. Well, it turns out those are really useful in this because those are samples that are, some of them are actually our blood samples that we made. Some of them are intended to be trace DNA samples that give us a handle on being able to see something we know the ground truth. They're intended to have DNA there, they're also intended to be a trace sample. So we have to go closer look at those blinds that we have. There, in fact, were 9 of those that had gone to Signature Science where we had low or no DNA recovery. So we went back to those blind materials. We sent them a portion. So we looked at the other portion of those swabs, and we were able to detect DNA in all of those and be able to interpret those pulses. Something's going on here.
We pause. So, relay conversation that happened when this all emerged, which is that Don Boswell and I called Commissioner Demak to let her know about this issue. And as we were concluding the call, she said, well, I would like to say that it was nice talking with you ladies, but it wasn't. And then she said, but the one small silver lining here is that it was the HFSC blind program that contributed to a real thorough understanding that we had an issue here. So that's just a plug for, and when I talked to a prosecutor, not Mr. Parsons, but another one about this issue, he said, everybody should be doing blinds. That's my takeaway. All the labs should be doing blinds because then you pick up on not just stress testing your own system, but also these types of issues. Now, implementing that is a little bit harder than turning on a light switch, but it does show the value of blind QC for sure.
Yeah, it's great. It's very flattering how it's worked. It's great. I appreciate it. And we spend a lot of time on our QC systems. I also kind of look at this as just unsettling that HFSC, because of these things that we do, may have been about the only laboratory really be able to detect this issue. And that's not exactly a great commentary either. You would hope as a system we could see these things better than we can. If we look at unintuitive results that we have seen now across, trying to figure out, so first thing we go to is, okay, something's going wiggy in the lab. And again, I've got to give CSI an awful lot of credit. They dug right in, they engaged. I couldn't ask for a better response out of them in terms of trying to figure out what was going on. So we looked at the unintuitive results that we had from 2022 to 2024, and there's kind of a distribution of what they look like. They were done across 6 different lots, so that's kit lots, think box. And we've got them labeled A through F there, so don't try and snow you under with too many numbers. Lot F sticks out. Something different is going on there, because we have both unintuitive results that spike way up, as well as blinds that spike way up there. Something definitely was different about lot F. Now, I put the numbers to it there on the bottom. I'm not even going to try and keep saying numbers. We'll just keep referring to that as lot F. That is the certificate of analysis for lot F. So like I said, Qiagen is not a stranger to quality systems, quality reporting, all of these things. They have quality reporting that they've done to it. Lot F passed all of their QC checks. Clearly something's off about F, and it does seem to be about that lot and not other things, because this was test all of those unintuitive results and failing blinds were across a 3-month time frame. They were across different extraction dates. They were across different analysts, 3 different analysts. They were in 13 different batches analyzed on instrumentation, and across 5 different instruments. So it doesn't seem to be related to a specific instrument, specific analyst, specific day, specific phase of the moon, specific, date that's got a T in it, none of that. It really does seem to be something with the reagent itself. Okay, so yeah, hair caught on fire. We paused our outsourced testing while we're trying to figure this out, so we don't keep making issues. We determined that the root cause extraction could be in Qiagen manufacturing, and Qiagen did come in and work with CSI, developed a testing plan to evaluate. This is where I gotta say, there has been a lot of work that has already gone into this. We also all understand there is a lot of work yet to happen as a result of this. But we had 340 samples that were tested at CSI across all of their platforms. We did blood and semen samples that we tested. We did dilution sets to evaluate potentially low yields. We did different lots of DNA investigator kits. We utilized both the old, the new, and the bad, the lot F, but also there's an October change that Eric is going to talk about in their manufacturing process of Qiagen. We had lots before and after that. We also went back in and pulled back out 87 prior blinds that had been run, because those are, again, just ground truth samples that we manufactured with an intended result, so they give us a handle on what we should expect. Not that it's always going to do that, but what we should expect. Those are all sent through to CSI for retesting. Now, out of those 87, we've got all those results back. And this is what I mean. They are generally engineered to be trace samples. So 84 of them came back exactly like we would expect with new testing. There were 3 that were low recovery. Both HFSC got a low recovery and CSI got a low recovery. It's a trace sample. It's not unsurprising. So we haven't identified, out of all of that testing, any issues with specific instruments, staff. Results of testing was as expected. So we're finishing off in our discussions with CSI. We can't, these are sexual assault kits, these are violent crime cases. We can't just simply stop testing forever. We have to have a mechanism to be certain of what testing looks like and that we can be confident in results. We were working through the last of that, what the new quality control measures will be with CSI. We hope to restart the outsourced testing for sure. Any questions to this point? Okay. Now, we also had a series of meetings. Here's the point. I'll say what meetings we had, and then I'm going to hand it over to Eric to talk about some of the other aspects of this. So we met with Qiagen on March 19th with their QA folks in Germany and Signature Science. We discussed some things. Center for Human ID also had a meeting with them on the 19th because they use the cartridge not quite as extensively as Society. They also use the EasyOne platform. And then on March 25th, we engaged in a meeting with Qiagen, their manufacturing people, their QA people, Qiagen's legal department, some of their executive was there. We also had along ANAP, ASLAD, and TFSC were in that meeting as well. So we covered Qiagen's manufacturing processes, what their incident investigation is, their general production, manufacturing, root cause analysis, what their quality assurance testing is within this, and their customer complaint testing. So I will hand this over to Erica for the other parts.
So I'll sort of pick up from there, and honestly, I think the point of having me present was just to give everybody a small break from Peter. So Peter's correct in the sense that CHI contacted Qiagen and asked for a meeting as well. TACLAT had put out a notification making text aware of these issues. And in my personal opinion, in reading the customer notification that was included in that communication from Qiagen, it was very confusing and very hard to determine whether or not our laboratory, the Center for Human Identification, was affected. So I reached out to Qiagen and asked for a meeting to try and get a better understanding of what the issue was and how to better determine whether or not our laboratory was affected. And Peter's correct, in the interim, there was a larger meeting that was scheduled for March 25th, which I also attended. And we were able to provide Qiagen with a list of questions in advance so that it could sort of guide the conversation, and they had a firm understanding of the kind of information that we were interested in. So that, of course, covered everything from their quality incidence investigations, root cause analysis, manufacturing, production, right? Again, basically, we wanted inside information as to how these cartridges are manufactured. So during that meeting, Qiagen indicated that the QC process for these lots all performed as expected. Of course, that left the window open to try and get a little more information as to how their QC process works. Once the actual cartridges are created, are produced, or manufactured, there's a QC process that happens before they're released for production. That QC process requires a sampling from the beginning, middle, and end of that batch to perform a QC. It utilizes a very high level of DNA, so they target 4 nanograms. And if that QC passes so 12 from the beginning, 12 from the middle, 12 from the end, for a total of 36. If the QC of all 36 cartridges pass, then that lot is then subject to that visual inspection that Peter earlier talked about, and then essentially released for production, into the public, essentially. It's distributed to laboratories. They acknowledge that they are not ultimately able to say with certainty that the pH is in fact the issue. However, throughout their investigations, they aren't able to rule out pH as being the issue. And so inherently, they think that this is the most likely contributing factor to the problem. And they indicated that the pH, for what it's worth, is supposed to be between 7.4 and 7.6, and they think that the pH was somewhere a bit higher, hovering around 8.5. So that inherently affects the cartridge's ability to yield a DNA profile, or results in the low yield of the DNA profile. They indicated that they made a manufacturing change in October 2024, and that they identified the time frame of the affected lots to be anywhere between February 2024 to October 2024. And they talked about the fact that they rely on a complaint mechanism in order to be able to determine if there are issues with kits. So that means that a laboratory has to identify that they're having an issue, contact Qiagen and indicate that that is an issue, and they log that on a complaint trend mechanism that they utilize. They mentioned that historically they were hovering anywhere between 0 and 0.1% for complaints, but that this specific lot, that percentage increased. They had 3 complaints, and that's essentially what caused them to initiate their investigation process. They assured us that there was no, according to their complaint system, there was no broader indication of a systemic issue, and also that there were no concerns for the kits beyond those that were reviewed within their investigation process. And then as a follow-up, they performed, or they notified, I should say, customers. We received customer notification on April 1st, and it's my understanding that a broader customer notification went out on April 3rd. And in there, they actually identified specific lot numbers that they had identified as being problematic, whereas in that previous notification, they had not. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through a little bit high level what we learned in that conversation. Essentially, they feel that the issue is solidified down to their filling process. So what that means is that essentially, in order to create those cartridges, they have that buffer MTL that gets put into those cartridges at some point in the manufacturing process. They have a bulk storage of it, it's 500 liters. They QC that 500 liters. I believe that they said that they use 50 microliters in order to perform that QC. Assuming that that QC passes, that then bulk vat, if you will, of 500 liters is used to these, it's then placed into these intermediate filling bags that are then used, the MTL buffer from those filling bags are then placed within the cartridge. So they indicated that prior to October 2024, they were creating those filling bags on demand. Whenever the process, which runs from anywhere from 1 to 2 days, is running low on that intermediate filling, they go ahead and whoever is staffed at that time creates another filling bag from that stock of MTL buffer. What process change they made was that they now are anticipating how many filling bags they're going to need to run the entire line, and they're pre-filling all those bags. And from their point of view, that's going to, or it has, minimized the variability between that MTL buffer, having all of those intermediate bags filled at one time by the same person and utilized throughout the entire process. Okay, so Peter contacted Alicia Caraquai from CSIC, you might be familiar with her, and she kindly lent herself to this project and ran some statistics. Now, I'm not a statistician, so I'm just going to read for you the hypergeometric equation that she did. So if Qiagen typically produces about 83,000 in their lots in their entire manufacturing process, right? We're using that as our base number. The tolerable rate of defective items is 1 in 100, and the desired confidence level is 0.95, so 95% confidence. So if we want to be 95% confidence that we have 1% or less of defective items in that entire batch of 83,000, we would need to inspect a minimum of 235 randomly selected items from throughout that batch in order to be able to say with 95% confidence that the number of non-defective items in that lot is 1% or less. So that would mean after that testing would have done that, we could say with confidence, 95% confidence, that 82,170 of those items would be defect-free, whereas we would allow for 830 to be defective. I just want to highlight the bolded here, that would require a QC of 235 randomly selected items. However, Qiagen indicated that they test 36. Okay, so back to our customer complaint trending. Qiagen uses this process to try and identify recurring issues and to drive continuous improvement. They said they average about 2,500 kits shipped per month. So if you do the math, that equates to about 120,000 cartridges. And again, as I previously mentioned, Qiagen said that their complaint rate had been anywhere between 0 and 0.1%. Their investigation was launched in August 2024 because the complaint rate increased to 0.12%, which comes out to 3 complaints. So that was all the information that we gathered, not only from that meeting, but from subsequent communications with Qiagen. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't point out that there are a couple of places in here where I can see some opportunities for improvement. Number one, I would say informing the customer better about that complaint process. I, as a DNA analyst, for example, if I had case and I had an item where I was expecting some kind of a result from a DNA standpoint. If I had a presumptively positive item and I submitted it through extraction and I ultimately did yield a profile, there's a process when I'm looking at my case from a holistic view where that's not intuitive to me. That doesn't make sense. I'm expecting that I would get a profile. I would likely send that item back for re-extraction. If during my re-extraction I yield a profile, I feel that this issue was resolved. It's a one-off, things happen, chemistries fail. There's nothing inherent in that process alone that's going to indicate to me as a DNA analyst that I need to file a complaint with the vendor. Number two, if I'm not processing a sample that has some kind of indication as to the fact that I should yield a DNA profile. Let's say I'm processing a low-level sample. There is no mechanism that's triggering me to question that result. So again, I could be a customer that does have an infected lot, but I have no idea. So the idea of using the complaint system as the mechanism by which we're investigating these issues is inherently flawed from a DNA analyst standpoint, from the laboratory standpoint, in my opinion. Second, customer notifications. There was a notification that went out back in October. Again, by my read, it's difficult to know whether or not my laboratory was affected. I would argue by my read, I would say we were not affected, only to find out after the larger conversation that we might in fact be. So again, the wording in that customer notification was vague. I would argue confusing is the word that I would use. And that customer notification, to my understanding, only went out to laboratories that issued a complaint. So if you didn't issue a complaint, you wouldn't know that there was an investigation going on at the vendor level. So you wouldn't know to start, maybe have a heads up, if you will, start looking to see if in fact you may have this issue.
Can I say one thing, Erica, to add to that is that while that whole process that Peter was describing that was ongoing with SIGSI to try to figure out what was going on, meanwhile, there were other labs in the country and other places who had been complaining. So it is true that among this group here in Texas, the reason we were able to really zone in on it was because of the blind quality control program at HFSC, and that you had expected results that you could clearly weigh against what you were getting from SIGSI. But in other places, they were also identifying it. And so, but there was no communication like, hey, like you say, let's have a heads up about that. Because I wonder if there had been, would the whole process that Dr. Stubb described, maybe that could have been shortened or shortcutted a little bit because they could have zoned in on what the issue was if they had known.
Right. And to that point, you don't know what you don't know. And yes, I agree, more communication is always better. The next little point is, of course, we can increase the number of QC samples, right? Our hypergeometric equation demonstrated the desire, if you will, from a confidence level of having a higher number of samples that are subjected to that QC process. And then lastly, and this is a little on the scientific technical side, but their QC process utilizes a high yield DNA sample. And so I would argue it's possible that the vendor themselves wouldn't be in position to recognize this issue, because with a very high level sample, if you have stunted recovery, if you will, you could still potentially yield a profile. If they were utilizing a lower level sample or a dilution series, they might have been better positioned to identify this issue as well. Okay, I'm gonna hand it back to Peter.
Yep, sorry to get stuck with me again. All right, so what are we changing at HFSC in order to try and address this? And I'm not sure we really said it in here. I mean, what the issue is with this is low yield or no recovery of DNA. So basically what it means is, it doesn't mean that we question if I've got a profile, I'm confident in the profile. If the question for me is, oh, our battery's running low here. What if we miss a profile? false negative situation, which could mean missing a potentially exculpatory profile or missing a potentially relevant investigative profile. That's the issue. So we are evaluating other non-cartridge based systems. Any kind of cartridge based system, you know, it's a once and done thing. I can't QC that individual cartridge. So there's a higher vulnerability there, and you're more dependent on the quality control mechanisms within the manufacturer. We are looking to change both internally and what we would require of vendors to use lower input of DNA in their QCs, so say like a 175 dilution. So we are pressing at that low end to see if we've got low recovery. Also establish a pass-fail on that quantum range. One of the things, and Eric and I talked about this a fair bit, toxicologist, not a biologist, but this is a quantitative process for DNA. Basically, DNA quant is completely externally controlled. There is no internal control, so it's very difficult to control for these variances that are always going to happen. Ideally, there would be some kind of internal control that could be devised for this, similar to, say, isotope labels, internal controls that we use in toxicology. I don't know what that looks like, but at least establishing a quant range. So this is a little bit like looking at the peak height or peak area on an internal standard in a toxicology analysis to see, did the internal standard look roughly correct? And then a lot more stringent visual inspection of cartridges in the laboratory as we are putting them on an instrument. And so those are some of the things that we're looking at. Now, other things we still have a lot of questions on. That April Qiagen letter, I can't rule out that there aren't other lots that are affected. Specifically, this is because lot F was not included in that April letter. Now, Qiagen says that's because they did not have any of that lot internally that they could reproduce the issue, but lot F clearly stuck out. It was not included in the April letter. Now, HFSC, North Signature Science, received any of the lots that are included in that April letter. However, clearly, there's still issues. So we have disclosed all of this, we actually chose to disclose the range from January through October, basically trying to bracket the area that Qiagen has notified that they think there's the issue. So if we had cases that maybe were received in January to make it in there, may have been caught in that. We disclosed all that through the American County District Attorney's Office. They have done breaking notices on affected cases. And we are working to identify potentially impacted cases in SIG-SIDE data. They are working diligently with us on that. Again, I can't say that good about SIG-SIDE, what they're doing in this. And then we will work at coordinating what does it look like for retesting. And that is not a simple thing because this may involve consumption of evidence. It may be that these are samples that really aren't material probative relevant. There's a lot of discussion. It's going to be a case by case thing about what that actually looks like. Sorry, back up there. Now, I will say we have already started kind of going back through a lot of past data. Again, forensic biology has spent an immense amount of time on this already. We've used the Easy2 platform for about 15 years now. And we have internal quality checks, performance checks, proficiency tests, line quality control tests, samples that have expected results in that. So we are going back through all of that data, looking for any potential patterns within that. So far, we have not identified any trends. So far, it looks like we don't have a systemic manufacturing issue that has affected stuff going back. But, you know, low or no DNA recovery from a sample may not always be the result of a manufacturing issue. And this is part of the conundrum in this. There are lots of reasons why we may not have recovery of DNA. Interferences within the material itself. There's no DNA there. There's a very low amount of DNA there. We have been pretty obsessive over the years about not consuming the entire amount of DNA that's there, specifically because of some of these. So we're confident the sample remains. There's going to have to be a discussion on the relative risks and things of is it worth consuming what remains, trying to address this. So we just, and I'll say here, if there is a stakeholder, this is what's in those rating notices that have gone out to cases, but if a recipient has a low or no recovery circumstance, that's the kind of place that we're looking for. This is not a question of actual profile. The cartridge doesn't make profiles. The cartridge may miss profiles. So with that, if there are any questions that I can answer.
I would just say that we sent a survey out, which I guess that's a regular occurrence these days, about who's using these particular kits. And it looks like from our results, all the labs with the exception of Swift's, Harris County, and Bear, I think I got that right. But Harris County, interestingly, was in the process of validating the EZ2, but they were having a hard time due to low yield. And so they paused that project. And now we were talking about that perhaps this is why, but I'm not sure we know that, but it was actually paused. So you guys were using the Symphony, the Qiagen.
And that also is, I mean, I think Qiagen reagents are used by many labs. There are multiple formats of it. And again, to be clear, you're talking about an EZ1 and EZ2 platform format of these reagents.
So, Brady, do you want to say something?
That's a question, Peter. So our experience was that we got recovery, but we couldn't amplify. It's a little different scenario. It happened kind of late last year. You had mentioned that the samples that were in the blinds that did not yield DNA were created to be low level DNA samples. Did you have situations where it was a high level sample that also missed?
Basically, yes. I think it's the shortest answer there. We've got blinds that in all 9 of those blinds, we saw recovery where Signature Science reported no recovery. Now there are ones that it's low, and you could see just variance within normal expected could explain the difference in when we reanalyze it. But there's at least 2 of them that did pretty significant the difference.
Thank you.
One of the points that Sig made on the call with the manufacturer was that if they're QCing with high amounts of DNA, like 4 nanograms, maybe they need to do some QCing that is not that high. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Because you don't always get 4 nanograms in forensic case. I mean, so maybe an understatement. Yeah. And so you gotta remember they're manufacturing these kits for a range of industries, not just the forensic one. And Peter talks about the fact that the notice left off law F, which we know is a problem, and the rationale for that, we understand, was that, well, those are all expired, nobody's gonna use it, so we don't have to mention it, but it's like, there's no expiring in the criminal justice system, like those cases were worked, those district attorneys need to know if those cases were impacted. So the concept of it expiring and nobody using it anymore may, in a medical diagnostic type setting, may make sense, but it doesn't in the forensic application. Is that fair to say, Peter?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, I get, and there is a bit of a cultural divide here, not American German, but forensic and use in the courts, and the fact that we have a duty to notify and correct that goes back decades, and clinical that is very concerned about current clinical diagnoses with a patient who's in the lab, in the office, and going forward, and trying to bridge, helping a company that really views these things from a clinical perspective to understand the necessity of what we have.
Thank you, Dr. Stout, and for that enlightening presentation.
Thank you.
I'm kind of disappointed that the end user has to be the one to find this, and then all the fallout goes to them too.
get started.
All right, thank you.
I think Mr. Parsons has a question.
No, it wasn't a question. It's more thanks, Dr. Bernard, because I'm probably the end user in this whole hypothetical. So, and just to make sure I have it right, DPS uses Qiagen. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll get with Brady.
I have nothing further. Let's move on to item number 14, the recent and upcoming forensic development training and education projects.
So we gave various presentations at the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. They were well received, I think. So that was good. We always participate in that. Multiple talks we usually give on panels and things. Then the other thing is that we hosted, I think, what was a successful meeting of DNA technical leaders. The Rangers have been very generous with their training facility in Waco, allowing us to meet there. We focused on activity level analysis. It was great. We had lawyers and scientists interacting, and that will continue across a series of meetings where we're ultimately hoping to provide guidance to touch-time analysts on the subject of PPR, so transfer persistence, prevalence, and recovery. In addition, we'll be doing other in-person meetings to go over some other issues impacting DNA TLs, like relatedness with StarMegs and other things like that. So there's a lot of work going on in that space, but I think it's off to a great start.
All right. Item number 15, update from DPS on the crime lab records.
We have Mr. Callahan with us from Text DPS. Thank you for being here. I think it won't take very long. We're loading up that PowerPoint. It's not sharing.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Callahan. I'm the Records Portal Program Supervisor with the Texas Department of Public Safety Crime Laboratory Division. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and provide this update. We've had significant movement in the portal actually in the last 8 days. So this update is significantly more than we expected. We could have been a little over a week ago. So here are the topics that I plan on covering today. Brief introduction to the portal for anyone who might be unfamiliar with the initiative. Update on the administrative rules, update on the portal vendor, our current outreach efforts, a discovery page we set up, and then questions to be adopted. So briefly, because I know you're all familiar with the initiative, but for anybody watching at home, Senate Bill 991 of the 88th legislative session called for the creation of a single centralized portal for two things: the request and transfer of records between 3 entities: crime laboratories, attorneys representing the state, and a very long way of saying the defense. Parties authorized access to records under discovery. Within that, 3 separate entities have been empowered. DPS, we have to create the software, create the program, and maintain it. Forensic Science Commission is responsible for sanctions for non-compliance. There is a mandatory participation component to this. And then attorneys representing the state have been charged with role assignment to the defense. That's in alignment with 3914, where they have the responsibility of assigning that access. So within the administrative rules, actually just yesterday, the rules were voted on by the Public Safety Commission. Prior to that, they went to the governor's office. I know you're all very familiar with administrative rulemaking, but they voted to accept it. So the next step is it will be published in the Texas Register for a public comment period. Those rules themselves were created with a stakeholder group that involved for the Science Commission, representatives of government labs, city labs, private labs, as well as we had representatives of both defense, prosecutions, a couple of judges. So we tried to have a stakeholder group that was very representative to make sure that these administrative rules are in alignment with the goals of the project that everyone has. Very excited to be able to show this one. So for a while now, that "You Are Here" little note has been stuck on the post solicitation government processes. It takes time, but we have actually just as of last week awarded the contract, and we are able to now publicly announce the vendor that was assigned it. So today is actually the first time publicly that we're doing this. So the vendor is Systema Technologies. They are a Texas-based company. They're actually centered right here in Austin, although they do have a field office in San Antonio. They have over 20 years experience in the field and have worked with a number of different state agencies. So we've already had our kickoff meeting. We've even had the opportunity to see some early demos of what their kind of vision is for how this is going to go forward. And we're confident that in partnership with them, we're going to move this project forward to a program that we're all kind of have in mind, goals we have in mind. As far as outreach efforts, prosecutors and defense attorneys might have been surprised this morning or late afternoon. We've already just reached out to both members of the prosecution and defense through these professional organizations. We've distributed a survey to assess what sort of features within the portal do they consider critical, what are desires, what kind of reports, and then through that there's an opt-in method to kind of join a information distribution group, and then we might then pull from that focus group. So as we go through development, we'll be able to test features, send it out to focus groups and say, do you like this, do you not? One of the things that cause programs to fail is not enough engagement with the end user stakeholders through development. So we're very conscious of that, and we're trying to avoid it by engaging with these groups. So if you're a member of the defense prosecution, a member of these organizations, you probably have an email from me. This is in parallel. We already have a distribution group for crime laboratories. They are receiving semi-regular newsletters covering the project and issues as they come up. Finally, we have launched a crime laboratory Texas Clear Connect specific page within the Texas DPS website. So if you go to the main Texas DPS, near the top you can navigate to crime laboratories, click on that, scroll all the way down to where we kind of list our statewide programs. There's a link to the Texas Clear Connect Discovery Portal. On there we have some general information about what the portal is. We also have, used to be up-to-date information on where we are on the project, and then you go back and make a couple updates. Now we've got more information. Also, all the newsletters we have issued to those crime labs are hosted there. So you can go back and see them at any point. All future newsletters will also be posted there. And eventually the exemption form, which is part of the administrative rules, part of that whole process, will be hosted there as well. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
I did want to mention that there is a rider in the budget that allows for $500,000 for local labs, so city and county labs, to apply for funding to help with records modernization, to assist them in their compliance with portal. So that is a good development. I mean, we're not through that process yet, so it has to stay there the whole way through, but it's in the Senate's budget, so hopefully it will stay and that will help folks. And I'm not sure what the application process will look like to get access to those funds, but I believe it'll be administered by the governor, is that right?
That's my understanding. Is it would be the governor's office, CJE department. So a lot of the local labs, us as well, we all have relationships with that office to be able to apply for grants. So it'll just be one of the opportunities for laboratories to apply. Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. So early on with that distribution group for the crime laboratories, we distributed a survey, gathering a number of information to include what systems are in place. We also, through that survey, identified the need that there was going to be some financial significance to this, and we have been working to get that grant process. I'm a big proponent of under promise, over deliver. So as we're still in the process, we hear good things. It's still going through the process.
Sorry, just a quick question. Is there a tentative timeline for when those administrative rules will be available on the Texas Register? And forgive my ignorance.
So the Texas Department of Public Safety's Public Safety Commission voted on those yesterday. So I will get you the turnaround time, but I'm assuming they're sending the package them up, send them down next week.
Okay.
So I'm sure it'll be within a week or two that they'll be posted.
Okay, thank you.
Just one question. You pick your vendor. How many vendors did you have to choose from?
So we're out of the, I cannot disclose, right, we're out of that period. We had 3 vendors that were evaluated as part of that process.
Lynn, I have a question. I don't know if it's for, I don't know who it would be for, but have we, when we're talking about the portal, closed cases, so the case has been disposed of on our side, are those cases then taken off of the portal? Are they there in perpetuity? Have we talked about that issue at all?
What do you mean, is access closed after a certain period?
Right.
So the case is adjudicated in the criminal justice system and you all had access, the lawyer and the first side had access, then it gets disposed of, and the question is, does the access get shut off for the lawyers?
Right.
I don't believe that's something we've fully discussed yet. There is the idea of continual discovery, so I believe that our current plan is to keep those accessible for the lifetime, and whatever attorneys are being assigned to that role as the defense attorney would therefore receive notifications if there's an update to that case. However, if you're talking about fully adjudicated and removed, then that could be something we could explore.
Are you thinking about it, Jarvis, from what perspective, that it's good to have perpetual access or not good?
I'm thinking from the perspective of just storage, meaning how much storage are we talking about on this portal? Because if you're talking, say, DPS, the amount of cases that come through are, I mean, there's so large of an amount of cases. How long does it stay up there? I know that with some of our other discovery vehicles, we've had situations where unless we got like unlimited cloud storage, then the discovery was slower, i.e. getting stuff over. So I just didn't know. We've worked with DPS and our contracts to be able to tell them if cases are dismissed and these are things you shouldn't be working on. Like, I didn't know if on the prosecutor's end, do we need to be sending a list of disposed cases back to DPS so that they need to bring those things down in order to create storage? That's the thought from our perspective.
So a critical component of the portal legislation that is actually in the government code already is that it cannot serve as a repository. It is not the repository for these records. So the way that the portal will have to work, it will integrate with the different LIMS and records management systems used by laboratories and go out and reach when the records are requested and pull those out. So the storage of records will be the laboratory locations which are already storing these records in compliance with their retention policies and things, which most of those have a very long period for these types of things. So no, I don't perceive a need to have notifications when cases reach that point being sent from a portal storage perspective.
So Jarvis, the records aren't going anywhere. The portal allows you to see into the existing record keeping at the lab. Does that make sense? So you see into their records essentially.
I just didn't know, like, for example, if there is a writ on the case 3-4 years down the road, can we give the writ attorney access to the same records? Like, how does that, I just didn't know how that worked.
So we are still in development, so don't quote me 100% that this is how it's going to be, but kind of the vision is, and I think it's actually in the administrative rules, is that each sort of prosecution office will have to designate an administrative user that then will assign roles to prosecutors for prosecutor access. And then those prosecutors who are best positioned to know the current defenses on a given case will be doing the role assignment for defense access. So that would just be one of those things that could be handled internally in that office. If you have a new attorney on the thing, they would just be granted the prosecution.
So if a lawyer gets subbed out for whatever reason, whether it's because the lawyer changes at the trial stage or later on, you add, you know, a writ lawyer, that's something that that is a feature that has to be there. Does that make sense, Jonas? Can you hear us, Jonas?
Yes, sorry. What else? Yeah.
Ms. Boswell has a question.
I have a bunch of questions, but I'm going to save them for a private audience that will request. Two things though, generally, you mentioned that you're gonna have the prosecutor and defense attorney groups that you're trying to come to get to sort of, you know, review the various screens or beta test some of the things that you wanna do. Are you also going to expand with the laboratories beyond the working group that you have? Will it include the people who've signed up and said they're interested, or do you have some mechanism in place to make sure that labs are getting to weigh in on that?
Yes, it's actually a suggestion that came in to establish focus groups based off of what the systems are in place. So we will be doing that and then kind of pulling those focus groups in as we are developing that integration component. I highlighted the prosecution and defense because that's kind of the current initiative. Surprisingly, getting a hold of the laboratories has been very straightforward and set up. So we have a very good distribution group to gather that information and sort of start forming those groups. So that's why that wasn't highlighted, but it is on our radar.
Right, and then it is, I assume, since y'all are a state agency too, is this Tex Ramp certified?
So Tex Ramp certification has undergone some changes. So that's one of those things that will have to be done when the software program is ready for that stage.
But before everybody has to start using it, y'all would not be able to use it without doing that too, right?
Yeah, we're having the Tex Ramp, FedRAMP conversation with cyber and IT. It's just, I think our direction from DIR has changed as that program has changed. But yes, we'll have to be compliant with that, like y'all.
Yes,
before
right.
we all get this thing going, so.
Okay, all right, great.
All right, anything else?
Question, I think I know the answer. This only applies to attorneys in criminal cases, but might the portal be used in the future for attorneys in civil matters?
I think that would take a legislative change and that would be on the scope of something we could just do.
Because it's written in the statute for criminal, okay.
Yes, it is, I believe specifically written, if you do forensic analysis and anything that can be used in a criminal action in Texas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 16, update from the Texas Association of Crime Laboratory Directors.
So this is between our typical meetings, so we don't have just a whole lot of TAC-led specific stuff, but legislatively, probably the two big things to talk about is, kind of talked about it already, where we're at with hemp and all things THC. Senate Bill 3 passed the Senate floor, and right now it is all House. House Bill 28 is seeming like one of the main options. House Bill 28 keeps a carve out for rinks that have cannabinoids in them, but pretty much excludes everything else. I am not nearly smart enough to predict what's going to come out of this. I just can't. But it clearly is going to have impacts to laboratories and how we deal with hemp and marijuana, even if nothing passes, because that will leave us with the state we're in. The other one that is much better news, and I actually did bring some good news today, 1620, which is the Forensic Analyst Apprenticeship Program. Passed out of Senate Finance unanimously, still waiting for it to hit the Senate floor. There is a House bill companion for it. I forget the number, it's something up in the 5,000s. It's high enough that I suspect what they do is move the Senate bill once it passes the Senate, much lower number. But it's looking shockingly possible that might actually happen. It was Representative Monin that filed the House bill, so we've got appropriators in both House and Senate that seem supportive of this. And it may actually happen that we get that apprenticeship program to work. There's a variety of other bills. Most of them are kind of mixed and varied what their real impact would be. Brady and I keep eyes on stuff and enjoy lots of time in the Capitol cafeteria. So with that, are there any questions? Thanks.
Thank you. Item number 17, possible agenda items for next quarterly meeting. Is there anything anyone wants to have listed? All right. Item number 18 is the schedule of the next meetings for July 25th, 2025, October 24th, 2025, January 30th, 2026, and April 24th, 2026. Is there a motion to direct staff to schedule these meetings?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, motion seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And item number 19 is public comments. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
Anything?
No? Then is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Though I doubt that. Motion carries. Thank you.